Now, what ties all of these themes together is evolution. Organisms living on the earth today are modified descendants of these common ancestors. Here is, back to the whale, the evolution or possible evolution of the whale. Now, when we're talking about evolution, we cannot talk in certainties. This is a highly supported evolution of the whale, where you move from this organism that sort of hunted on land, this wolf-like ancestor of the whale, the Pakicetus, to an ambush predator, Ambulocetus. So Pakicetus, you can imagine sort of strolling along the banks of a swampland, the Tethys Ocean, and trying to catch things. Small deer. When this guy was around, deer were only about that big. Deer were tiny. Over time, Pakicetus developed into an ambush predator, Ambulocetus. So Ambulocetus, think of almost a mammalian crocodile. It would lay in the water. It would lay sort of, it would do like this, and its rostrum, so its jaw would be on the ground like this. Now, it couldn't hear very well, but you guys have been in bed before, right? Obviously. When you're in bed, you hear and you feel like every step in the house. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, yeah, that's how it would hunt. It wouldn't hear well, but it would feel those vibrations. And as a small deer came by, it would lunge out, grab it, and pull it into the water where it would drown the deer and then eat it. Over time, it became more and more aquatic. Now, Ambulocetus was just a mammal, and it was prey. There were some huge fish at the time. But it got bigger and stronger teeth and more adapted to an aquatic environment. Its nostril would slowly moving back farther and farther. And so for millions of years, it had changed one generation to the next with these modifiable, heritable traits. The ones that could hunt better in the water were the ones that got more food and could reproduce more often, passing those traits on to their offspring. So most organisms are tied together. There's a unity to life. They share certain traits because they have descended from a common ancestor. If you look, we've got humans, cats, whales, and bats. We all have pretty much the same basic structures in our arms. And you all know that when you look at a cat, their front legs are their arms, right? I mean, all of us are like, they're all legs, but that's their hand. Anyway, you've got the same phalanges. You've got the same metacarpals in all of these organisms because we all descended from a common ancestor. Concerns, questions? And now, finally, we talk about this guy, Charles Darwin, because I have to. Charles Darwin was around about 200 some years ago. Almost 200 years ago. And he published one of the most important influential books ever written on the origin of the species by the means of natural selection. So his idea, Darwin's big claim to fame, wasn't chasing things to eat them. It was descent with modification. Everyone always ascribes the theory of evolution to Charles Darwin, but he never, ever said evolution. What he said was descent with modification. You have an offspring. That offspring is slightly different than you. Your offspring will either now be better at reproducing or worse at reproducing. If it's better at reproducing, it will be able to pass that trait on to its offspring until it wins, until it outcompetes everything else. This is a good question. So what eugenics is where we're specifically picking a gene. There's no conscious pick. It's biological. It's natural. Yes, that's why it's called natural selection. Eugenics is what would be termed artificial selection. We do it with plants, and some people want to do it to other people. They're very similar. It's actually, everybody knew about artificial selection. We do it with dogs. We do it with mustard, horses. We do it with just about everything that we grow is artificially selected. Everything in Darwin's time was also everyone knew in order to get a bigger, riper tomato, you took 2 tomatoes that were big and ripe and you crossed them together. You're going to get some that are terrible and some that are even bigger. You keep the seeds from the good one and you grow it again. It's heritable. It's all artificial selection. He used that concept that everyone knew this is how it works in order to put forward this idea that if you look at selection over a long term, we know artificial selection happens. It might also happen in nature, and that's where you get the idea of natural selection. So he observed that individuals in a population vary in their traits, many of which seem to be heritable. That is, you can get some traits from your parents. You are not terribly different from your parents. I know you hate me saying that. But you've got 1 head, 2 arms, some blood. You know, it's... You didn't come out of an egg. You are very similar biologically to your parents. You may look slightly different than they do. You may act very differently than they do. But some traits are heritable. They're passed down. A population can produce far more offspring than can survive. Competition is inevitable. Except apparently among people. We just don't kill anyone off. But competition in the natural world happens all the time. And species are suited to their environments. They're adapted to their circumstances. He noticed all these things. So from that he said, individuals with inherited traits that are better suited to the local environment are more likely to survive and reproduce than less well-suited ones. That is, if you're super good at reproducing or super good at getting resources, you're going to survive. It really just makes sense, right? Right, you can't eat, you can't live. So the things that eat more can reproduce more, and if that's dependent on traits, then those traits being passed down will give them an advantage. Here we've got the Galapagos finch. Yeah, you've seen these 1,001 times. I'm sorry. You got different beak shapes, from the very big, thick beak that's used to break open seeds to the very much narrower but very sharp beaks that are used to eat fruit buds. To, let's see, what do? What's the number 4 here? I believe they eat, no, actually, I think they're the ones that eat from in between cacti. Cactuses have spikes. You got to get between them, and it's good to have a long beak for that. This guy eats insects, and the way he eats insects, number 3, is he typically will take a stick, tool-using bird, and that's the end of the world right there. I'm like holding it in my beak, and he sticks a stick into a hole, pulls out the grub, and then eats the grub. Each of these beaks give them a unique advantage for their particular environment, and they're passed on to the next generation. Originally, they didn't all look like that. They all looked like the same bird. But over time, these heritable changes have accumulated. Now, when we see birds like that, we're like, they're different. We have to classify them. Humans, us, have an innate need to classify things. Hold on. I need somebody's name. Who? Let's see. Carlin. Hi. Okay. Hypothetical situation. You get a bag of Skittles or M&Ms. What do you do with it? That's exactly what you do. Everybody does. First you look at it, jumble of colors, and you start sorting. We cannot stop ourselves. If given the opportunity, we would take a bowl of Fruit Loops and shift everything around. We just don't have the time for that in the morning. Humans need to classify things, and because of that, we impose our order on the natural world. We want to figure out, man, this dog and that dog, how are they related to each other? This flower and that flower, they all go together. So to classify them, these scientists called taxonomists have created a system in which domains are the top tier. We have 3 big domains. Everything can be divided into 3 groups: Eukarya, Archaea, bacteria. 3 big domains in which everything goes into. All of them are connected right here at this LUCA, last universal common ancestor. Okay, so we got 3 big domains. Two of the domains, archaea and bacteria, are what are termed prokaryotic. They lack compartmentalization. They lack a true nucleus. Most of life are really, really simple organisms. Eukaryotes, on the other hand, are the super cool, interesting ones that we all want to learn about. Eukaryotes include anything that's got that compartmentalization, that has a nucleus. It includes you, me, sharks. What do you and a shark have in common? You're both eukaryotes. Different protists, fungus. Most of the cool life on Earth that you want to study are eukaryotic. Everything that's multicellular is eukaryotic. So we got 3 domains. So, okay, let's play a game where I give you a domain, I give you an organism, and you tell me what domain it goes into. Check this out. Okay, fun game. Let's go with a cat. Eukarya, right. A tree. Eukarya, good, good. Let's go with a thermophilic bacteria. Oh, no, not bacteria. Thermophilic prokaryote that lives in 100 degrees Celsius. Yeah, it's not archaean. It's no, I'm sorry, it's not bacteria. It's archaean. You're exactly right. So archaeans love these extreme conditions. Bacteria, okay. E. coli. That's bacteria. You win. The idea is most of the things you see around the world, everything you see is eukaryotic. It gets a little bit trickier when you get down into the 2 prokaryotic domains of bacteria and archaeans. Archaeans live in extreme conditions. Like the deep sea vents. Archaeans live there. Archaeans live at the bottom of the ocean, piezophiles, high pressure. Pardon? At the sea vents, right. They live in, there's this place in Yellowstone Park. Yeah, right near the geysers. You guys know, so Yellowstone Park, geysers. Water shoots in the air, right? Good? You good, Annie? Awesome. I just remembered your name. That's why I had to go with it. And you're Katie. Working on it. Okay. All right, so there are these literal acid pools sitting out in the open in Yellowstone. You go for a walk and you stay on the path. Because if you go off the path, acid pools. Not just acid pools, almost boiling hot acid pools. Living in those acid pools are, the only thing living in them are archaeans. They survive there just fine. Humans don't so much. A brother and sister decided to go off the track. They went off the wooden platform because what they wanted to do, not kidding, people are dumb, go down to an acid pool and stick their foot in. Now, they're not going to dissolve right away.
No, because bases are dissolve organically.
Well, acids will eventually too. But right. It's going to be irritating. What they wanted to, it's sort of like, you guys know a pedicure? Yeah. Okay, we're on the same page. If you haven't had a pedicure, get one. It's worth it. They're going to take a lot of, they're like, that's a good idea. We should do that. They're going to take layers of skin off. Have they done that with you? That like the peely thing? It's almost like a potato peeler. And you're like, how can all of that come off? All right. So what would happen is you put your foot in that, a lot of that dead skin just goes away. Right. It's not instant, but it's super fun for them. So they climbed down there, and they took off their shoes, and the brother, it's not like you can just go right to the edge and put it in. You had to climb down a little, and he climbed down, and he went to put his foot in, and he slipped. And he went he went in. He didn't survive long, but while he was there, boiling hot water, acid. It's Batman villain being waiting to be made. But his sister just screamed a lot and went to go get help. Of course, by the time she got back, he was dead. They couldn't do anything for him. They couldn't get him out. They couldn't get the body out. So 2 days later, when they finally were able to get a chopper down there in order to retrieve the body was gone. Most of any rubber that he was wearing was also gone. All that was left was some residue of his clothes. Anyways, arcanes will mess you up. So here we go. The process of science. Here we're going to talk about the scientific method, which you've been learning about since what? First, second grade, something like that? So you old hat.